Welcome everyone to the Urantia book. The Urantia book is a 2,000-page revelation by advanced celestial beings to this planet to help uplift our lives individually and to change the course of our world collectively. Now, that might seem like a tall order, but I invite you to read even just 3 of these papers here in this book. And if you have not concluded that this is written by advanced celestial beings, then you could put it on the shelf, let it collect dust, maybe pick it up in the future. But I have concluded that this is life-changing, world-changing, and it simply must be exactly what it states that it is. So we're looking at dogma today. Dogma is some sort of religious belief, something that is not backed by evidence, some sort of unchanging creed or crystallization of truth. And we're going to see why the Urantia book is dogma and why it isn't, okay? Or what the dogma is within the Urantia book. The community's growing too. I just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. It really helps out. And I appreciate everybody that has so far. I'm excited about our growth here. So let's check this out. The certitude of the divine. The universal Father, being self-existent, is also self-explanatory. He actually lives in every rational mortal. But you cannot be sure about God unless you know Him. Sonship is the only experience which makes fatherhood certain. You see the procedure there? You have to accept that you want to be a son in order to know the unseen Father. But once you do accept that, then you will find that that Father is present in your life. That's the procedure. Belief to faith to knowing. The universe is everywhere undergoing change. A changing universe is a dependent universe. Such a creation cannot be either final or absolute. A finite universe is wholly dependent on the ultimate and absolute. Those are aspects of God. That's why they're capitalized. The universes and God are not identical. One is cause and other the effect. So when people say the universe is doing this for me, well, God had to cause that universe. The cause is absolute, infinite, eternal, and changeless. The effect, time, space, and transcendental, but ever-changing, always growing. Okay, so God is that stability in this universe of constant change. God is the one and only self-caused fact in the universe. Okay, so that can go beyond science, which is cause and effect. He is the secret of the order, plan, and purpose of the whole creation of things and beings. The everywhere changing universe is regulated and stabilized by absolutely unchanging laws. The habits of an unchanging God. The fact of God, the divine law, is changeless. The truth of God, His relation to the universe, is relative revelation, which is ever adaptable and constantly evolving universe. Okay, so that is one reason why the Urantia book is not a dogma, because it's teaching that truth is constantly evolving and changing, and that revelation is never definitive. So this book being a revelation of truth, it's saying that it's going to be updated at some point in time. In fact, this was the 5th revelation. Unlike Western man's scriptures, which say that this is the ironclad word, nothing should ever change about this. This book even says now, because they present scientific evidence in the book, they say even now we see your scientists, going beyond the evidence presented in this book, which is in the 1950s. Having said that, they're even, well, we'll get into the scientific discussion later, but let's continue on. Those who would invent a religion without God are like those who would gather fruit without trees, have children without parents. You cannot have effect without causes. Only the I am is causeless. The fact of religious, and that's God, that's another word for God. The fact of religious experience implies God, and such a God of personal experience must be a personal deity. Okay, so that is just, you're having a personal experience here. So you can love and be loved by God, which is a personal transaction, that loving and knowing of other persons. You cannot pray to a chemical formula, supplicate a mathematical equation, worship a hypothesis, confide in a postulate, commune with a process. You see, this is personal experiences. Serve an abstraction or hold loving fellowship with law. So an abstraction, I look at, maybe there's aspects of Eastern mysticism which are abstraction, because they claim things like we just know, or they don't have this. Remember, religion is supposed to be a thing to balance science and philosophy. It must take each into consideration. That is a philosophical postulate, that the I am is causeless. Okay? It's not a provable by science postulate, but an abstraction would be like, I simply just know things. I can just simply know. Well, where's the philosophical cause for that? Okay, here we go. True, many apparently religious traits can grow out of non-religious roots. Well, I just want to go back to this. Another aspect of abstraction is mental gymnastics, right? If you're having to make some sort of mental... Now, faith is not mental gymnastics. To outsiders looking in, they would say that faith is a mental gymnastics, right? But once you attain faith, then you see, oh my God, this is so logical and reasonable and plausible, but I had to take the leap of faith, hence why it's called faith, in order to understand that first. True, many apparently religious traits can grow out of non-religious roots. Man can intellectually deny God, very true, we see it all the time. We see a whole entire world of it, in fact. And yet be morally good, loyal. Well, that's secular humanism. Filial, honest, and even idealistic, right? We see a lot of people who don't believe in God, but they're also not going in there and robbing each other, doing school shootings, whatever. Man may graft many purely humanistic, that's that secular humanist, branches onto his basic spiritual nature, and thus apparently prove his contentions in behalf of a godless religion. You say, hey, you know, like, let's look at some, maybe even people on, a good example of a secular humanist organization would be progressive left politics. There's no God involved in that, but they're really trying to, help each other out. But they'll have their faults because it's godless. You'll see. But such an experience is devoid of survival values, God knowingness, and God ascension. It's going to fall flat and cold. And they'll even admit, when I die, I'm just gone and dead. Okay? In such a mortal experience, only social fruits are forthcoming, not spiritual. The graft determines the nature of the fruit, notwithstanding that the living sustenance is drawn from the roots of original divine endowment, or both mind and spirit. The intellectual earmark of religion is certainty. The philosophical characteristic is consistency. The social fruits are love and service. See, somebody, I am a religionist, but I'm very highly philosophical consistent, and so is this book with that. The God-knowing individual is not one who is blind to the difficulties or unmindful of the obstacles which stand in the way of finding God in the maze of superstition, tradition, and materialistic tendencies of modern times. He has encountered all these deterrents and triumphed over them, surmounted them by living faith, and attained the highlands of spiritual experience in spite of them. So an example of that was, a lot of people are throwing out Christianity because they looking at this tradition, or maybe there's a lot of rituals attached, like Catholicism. Why is there a wizard with a golden rod at the head of the church with all these garb on? Didn't Jesus teach that a rich man can't enter into heaven, so why is the Vatican built out of solid gold while there's people dying in the streets? Okay, so that's a thing of, but you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, all right, well, God doesn't exist just because some guy wanted to invent Catholicism with his golden, rod or whatever. And same thing goes with the philosophical inconsistency of Christianity. Why did God need to change his attitude only when he saw his son bleeding on the cross? And now he says, okay, now we have forgiveness and mercy and everything for those humans. This is teaching God is an unchanging attitude. It didn't just start when Urantia, this planet in time and space, there's been trillions of inhabited planets. They didn't get love and mercy. Why did God have to change? See, that's that philosophical inconsistency which turns people away from religion and spirituality. But it takes a nuanced individual to sort through all of that and to still find God, even though they're a thinking individual who wants to have philosophic consistency. You can still find God. Cleverness of those who assemble objectionists, but it is true that many who are inwardly sure about God fear to assert such feelings of certainty because of the multiplicity and cleverness of those who assemble objections and magnify difficulties about believing in God. People that are like, oh, you believe in the space wizard or whatever they say. There's all sorts of ways that they can try to pick it apart. But it requires no great depth of intellect to pick flaws, ask questions, and raise objections. But it does require brilliance of mind to answer these questions and solve these difficulties. Faith certainty is the greatest technique for dealing with all such superficial contentions. All right, so here's where we get to the dogma aspect. If science, philosophy, or sociology dares to become dogmatic in contending with the prophets of true religion, then should God-knowing men reply to such unwarranted dogmatism with that more far-seeing dogmatism of certainty, of personal spiritual experience. So in other words, if a science person is saying, well, we know God didn't cause the universe because the Big Bang caused the universe. Well, if you're talking about cause and effect, well, then what caused the Big Bang? The science doesn't know that. Well, they can say, well, we know God is a fallacy because we evolved from animals. Well, what caused that single-cell organism to exist on the planet? So that's why man's religions are you can punch a hole in Christianity because the scientists are saying, we evolved from animals. And Christians have to have this fight. But we as living truth beings, we can say, well, we know, we damn sure evolved from single-cell organisms because we're not idiots. But what caused that single-cell organism? Oh, it was God. See? That's how you challenge. They're being dogmatic when they say, we know there's no such thing as God because Big Bang. That's a scientific dogma right there. But we can challenge that, or we can answer with the certainty of this dogmatism, the far-seeing dogmatism. They're saying there is a dogmatism in the universe, folks, that you can have. Not all dogmatism is wrong or should be rejected. There is one that you can readily accept as sons and daughters of God. I know what I have experienced because I am the Son of God. Okay? Let's read that again. So they're challenging with their scientific dogmatism. We can reply with much more far-seeing dogmatism of the certainty of personal spiritual experience. I know what I have experienced because I am the Son of God. If the personal experience of a faither is to be challenged by dogma, then this faith-born son of the experienceable Father may reply with that unchallengeable dogma, folks. The Urantia book is stating that there is an unchallengeable dogma. The statement of his actual sonship with the universal Father. Nobody in the universe can challenge that. I am an actual son of God. You are an actual son and daughter of God if you have chosen to be. And who's going to challenge that? They're not going to be able to challenge that by philosophy. They're not going to be able to disprove that with fact. That is the unchallengeable dogma of the universe, everybody. The certainty of personal spiritual experience. It's my personal experience. How did I arrive at that? Well, I arrived at that by having first a belief, growing into a faith, and now I have a knowing. So I'm answering the scientific procedures, the philosophic procedure. I'm not just saying, I know because I know, and just throwing it out there to mystical abstraction. I'm saying, no, it starts with belief. You got to take that belief. So only an unqualified reality, an absolute, could dare consistently to be dogmatic. See, that can be dogmatic, folks, because it's just an absolute. Those who assume to be a dogmatic must, if consistent, sooner or later be driven into the arms of the absolute of energy, the universal of truth, and the infinite of love. So if you're trying to find an unchanging reality of the universe, a dogma of the universe, there is a dogma of the universe, and that is God and personal experience with God. If the non-religious approaches to cosmic reality presume to challenge the certainty of faith on the grounds of its unproved status, then the spirit experiencer can likewise resort to the dogmatic challenge of the facts of science and the beliefs of philosophy on the grounds that they are likewise unproved. They are likewise experiences in the consciousness of the science or the philosopher. That's so deep because that hits right at the heart of all of your, what's it called? Simulation theory. How do you know, scientists, that you're not just a brain in a tank, right? How do you know that that scientific experiment that you did is just a computer program, and that this isn't all just simulation theory? We can know that because we know God. But that's how you challenge that. How do you know that you're not in simulation theory? No scientist and no philosopher can prove that he's not in simulation theory purely with science and philosophy. You need to go to spirituality and able to prove that that the person that you're talking to is actually a real person and not a computer program or a robot. How is science going to prove that? Of God, the most inescapable of all presences, the most real of all facts, the most living of all truths, the most loving of all friends, and the most divine of all values, we have the right to be the most certain of all universe experiences. We're in a different category simply because we decided that we want to be sons and daughters of God. Faith is the key to personality survival in the universe. So that is the unchallengeable dogma of the Urantia book. I know, well, it's not of the book though, okay? The book, it's of you. That is your unchallengeable dogma. The book you could throw away and burn. But you can never burn, I know what I have experienced because I am a son of God. That is the unchallengeable statement of dogma that I'll latch on to that to the end of my freaking days. And they're not going to end. I know my days are not going to end because I've attained this. And maybe you have, maybe you're beyond that. That's just the entry level to what you can experience. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed the video about dogma in the Urantia book. I hope that made it clear you're having an experience. Read this on your own and really synthesize this. I'm just taking 20 minutes to gloss this over, but you can contemplate this for weeks or freaking, an eternity. So that's on page 1127, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Oh, well. So thanks again for checking out the Urantia book, everybody. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and take care, and enjoy your eternal adventure.